So today I'll be covering these 8 agenda items. Some of them I will go through a lot faster, some of them a lot more in details. So first off, I'll start off with the challenges that I've been hearing from our customers that's facing issues with data security. Next, I'll share a little bit of our product, what is our vision, what is our strategy, and what do we do with our roadmap. I'll talk about the enterprise DLP, something that some of you may find very useful. And I'll share with you how you could enable data security on your tenant today. I'll give you a quick demo on what this product can do. And then I'll go through some deep dive on the product details. And finally, I'll touch on 2 topics, which is the licensing as well as the call to action. Okay. And anytime, feel free to drop any questions into the chat. I will respond to them time to time. Okay. Thank you. All right, so first off, let me just share with you a little bit about what I've been seeing on the ground with customers and even non-customers, issues with data security. Many a times, a lot of this data has been leaked in the web itself, and it's not that people hack them. These are what we call as unsecured cloud storage, where people unintentionally made a bucket or container open, unencrypted without any password, so anyone in the world could access it. And this is just one of the 2 examples that I'll be sharing. This is on Pfizer themselves. All right, this is talking about patient data. So in this kind of situation, the first reaction that many people would have is, okay, now that I know that the data is leaked, the next question they often have is, what is in that data, right? Similarly, for some of you who may have seen this cool looking mask being worn around, they call it the world's smartest mask. This is by a company called Razer, who brings us this cool looking mouse and keyboards. And similarly, their customers has been exposed in terms of their details. They talk about their full name, email, phone number. All of this been leaked out in the web. And this just all happened very, very recently within the last 2 quarters. Sorry. So the very first poll question I have for you, Dara, if you could help me, would I like to understand a little bit more about your environment, in the sense of which tenant do you use today, or rather, what kind of storage, how much storage do you have today in AWS? Okay, I'll give you a few minutes, about a few seconds to respond to that. Okay, so I'll move on to the second poll question. Dara, will you be able to share the second poll question?
Yep.
So which cloud service provider do you use today and plan to use in the future? AWS, Azure, GCP, or any others?
Do you want to mention if you're using anything other than AWS, Azure, GCP, you can feel free to go ahead and type it into the chat. The chat will only go to myself and Samuel so that it's private.
Okay, thank you. All right, thanks for your participation. I see some of you are sharing even using Oracle Cloud. Thanks, Kelly. So these are some of the challenges that I'm going to share with you that I'm hearing from my customers. All right, first of all, whenever there's a data breach, we all know somehow one way or another breaches do happen. It's just when it happens, what is in that data? Are we talking about PII? Are we talking about IP? How crucial it is? How does it affect your company's reputation? The next itself is on regulatory compliance. Most companies would have to comply to one or more of these compliance regulations. The last is something that many of us would have thought about, which is these malicious insiders. However, the greater concern I'm hearing about is the well-meaning insiders who accidentally leak out a file. So that, for example, in future, an older version of me may be using a cloud service provider which has very complex data sharing options. Instead of me trying to share with my team, I accidentally share it with the World Wide Web. So how does companies protect themselves from people like me, who is well-meaning, trying to share my files internally from the World Wide Web? So this is a question many of them ask themselves and are stumped upon, and that's where this solution comes in really handy. And here's why these existing DLP solutions do not help or fall short. They are very complex, all right? They are expensive. They rely on multiple different products in different areas of the organization. It is very resource intensive. You will have to manage a team to make sure that your policies are synchronized across different sites. When auditors comes in, they said, all right, pull out the first file and the last file that was generated within this year. Show me which policies have you scanned to. Very quickly, discrepancy will be found easily. And most people's DLP program, the architecture looks something like this, where they have different products for different points of their organization with different policies potentially for each one of these DLP solution. So how do we solve this challenge? It's a big, hairy problem to solve. The other challenge that we hear a lot about is, hey, now I'm storing my stuff in S3. Internally, we are sharing files. How do I know that there is no malware in my buckets? All right. It's very fast for the malwares to proliferate across. All right. Now that we're moving to the cloud, the attack surface has increased, and hackers are getting smarter. So how do we do that? Right. With Wildfire, our industry-leading malware scanning engine, they are able to stay ahead of the latest techniques and automate some of this prevention and give you the intelligence needed to detect and prevent them. Wildfire themselves has a range of analysis, ranging from static analysis to dynamic to machine learning, even to bare matter. I would say the procedures and techniques that they have is sophisticated and is well suited for the cloud itself. And that's why we collaborate with our team internally to make sure that we can offer the Wildfire malware scanning as part of our solution. So as you can see, Prisma Cloud Data Security extends two things. The first is Palo Alto Networks Enterprise DLP, and second is the Wildfire solution for public cloud storages like AWS S3. So we are using this enterprise proven, I would say, data DLP engine, and I will tell you in more details how this is very useful. One of the key things I'd like to share about our Prisma Cloud as well is that we do not just scan for public exposure at the bucket level, but even up to the granular level of the object. So what this means is you'll be able to identify a publicly exposed object within a private bucket, because most people would assume that, hey, if I have a private bucket, my object should be private. That's not necessarily true. There are instances where we have found that there are public objects in private buckets. And that's where Prisma Cloud combines all these three together to give you the benefits of managing your DLP, your malware scanning, and publicly exposed data in one platform. So here's our vision, our strategy, and our roadmap. Our intention is to start with Prisma Cloud, going to public cloud itself, working on unstructured data, because that's where most of the challenges come in and all your users has access to. The next challenge here is on the structured data and in hybrid cloud. That's the next area that we're driving towards. Currently, we are using our DLP engine in Palo Alto Networks and our Wildfire. And all of these are overlaid with our native Prisma Cloud UI, giving you that native Prisma Cloud experience. To solve, I would say, to provide you two key things. Number one is to have a unique, I'll say, value proposition where you as a customer can use a familiar UI to reduce all your cybersecurity issues in the cloud with our other modules in Prisma Cloud. And second, we'll be going multi-cloud, starting with AWS, followed by Azure and GCP. So let me deep dive a little bit about how our product works and what you can see or expect to see on our UI. So first off, we do data visibility and classification. So on the right, you can see this is our sample dashboard where you can see the number of buckets that we have. And from there, you can see which buckets are private or public. And within these buckets, you can see how many objects there are, how many are malware, how many of them are sensitive, and how many are publicly exposed objects. You'll be able also to tell if for those objects that is sensitive, which profile, is it PII or financial information data are inside these sensitive objects. And then the next thing you can do here is to see who is the owner of these objects. By the way, all these are clickable. So once you get into the dashboard itself, you'll be able to start clicking and identifying which objects are they mentioning on this dashboard. Okay. So the next thing we talk about is data governance. You can create policies and alerts to prompt you for any of these alerts that you'll be interested in. Is it be it with malware or is it with PII information? Then we have malware detection. You could tell when the file was created, which region it was located, which bucket it is, and the URL itself. And of course, we talk about alertings and notification. These are all the alerts that you can work on and close them once you have resolved the issues. So this is our roadmap itself, what we plan to do. Today, we have gone GA for, I would say, just last month for our US customers and last Friday for our EMEA customers. We've gone GA with all those blue boxes. These are all the capabilities that we have. Those that are not in any of those blue boxes are what we are working on today, and moving forward, that's what we'll be providing. So let me just talk a little bit about the enterprise DLP solution and tell you why this really matters, especially from a customer perspective. So today I represent the Prisma Cloud pillar over here. All right, we are protecting data at rest, and we are leveraging on the DLP cloud services. So every single data profile and pattern which you created to detect sensitive data on your environment, it will be automatically synchronized up into these DLP cloud services. And what this means for you as a customer is that once you do that, once you create the profiles and it gets automatically synced, the key benefit that you have as a customer is you do not need to manage all these data profiles and patterns anymore. Once you have done that, you automatically that synchronize down into the various Palo Alto Network products that you are using. So this means that you'll be able to free yourself to do other things that you like to work on. And our products that you own, that's Palo Alto related and DLP empowered, you have the same consistent data profiles and pattern, scanning all the files against the same profiles. So this is done for you automatically. You do not need to do anything else, okay? So the main capabilities for this enterprise DLP is that you do not need to install to have any more additional deployment. There's no ICAP or proxy you need to do. It's done on our end for you, okay? You will have the same 500 plus predefined data patterns, which uses numerous different ways to detect any of these patterns that you want to detect, ranging from ML classifiers to proximity analysis, confidence level, and weighted regex. We have several data profiles ranging from GDPR to PII to financial information to HIPAA. So to give you a quick glimpse on a sister product, which is Prisma SaaS, not a product representing, you could actually really start to look and see that, hey, they have under settings, data patterns, they share the data patterns with Prisma SaaS, Prisma Cloud, and even with the next gen firewall that is managed by Panorama, and of course the VM series. So this is great for our customers who are using our famous next gen firewall products. And here itself is an example of how it looks like on the next gen firewall, where you can create a profile to use the same patterns. So similarly, once you start building this here today, tomorrow, if you start to buy the next gen firewall and you subscribe to DLP service, this will automatically be synchronized across for you, such that you do not need to manage the next gen firewall's DLP settings. And many customers has been asking for this, and I'm glad to announce that, since last month, when we went GA, one of those two key things that we have is the customized data profile and pattern, where the customers can create their own data profile. Once they do that, they can select any data pattern, be it predefined or customized patterns that they created. So these are examples of the predefined patterns that they could select. They could search for, in this case, I put US, therefore I have all the US related data patterns. If you are supporting, a company that is located in 3 different countries, you could actually put in, the country names here, and it will show you all the relevant names, data patterns related to that 2 other countries. Finally, one thing that we always hear about is customers asking, Sam, it's great that your product can detect all of this, show me the findings, which files has what kind of data patterns. But one challenge I continuously hear is when I bring this file to my users internally and said, hey, the sensitive data, the question I get back is, where in the file is the sensitive data? And number two is, how do they look like? What is the definition of sensitive data? So here's us, giving you this solution that you can share, which is snippets. Snippets give you a sneak preview of where this sensitive data is. As you can see, this is an example of a fully masked snippet, meaning you can't see what it is, but you can tell the users like, hey, look at this. This whole entire file, in this area of that file, this is where you could see the sensitive data being located. It gives you the context and the location of where it is, such that your users internally can work on it and then determine that, oh yeah, there is sensitive data. Let me just either delete it or take the file, edit the file or delete the file, okay? So now, before I jump into the demo, I'd like to quickly show you how you could enable data security on your end. So some of you may have received that Pendo, say like a pop-up itself, a guide, where you could click and learn more. It brings you directly to this. The other way you could do this is to click on subscription, click on learn more, and click on enable data security. Once you have done that, you'll be able to see that there's this 0 GB/300 GB appearing. So what this means is that you will have 300 gig of freemium. So the first 300 gig of data that you do your testing or your trial is all free. You do not need to pay for any of them. You only start paying after 300 GB. I'll be more than happy to work with you through the onboarding if you face any challenges or if any other questions on that. Okay, so this is where this 300 GB is. But once you cross that 300 GB, one thing that we provide is what we call as the scan quota. What the scan quota can do is that it allows you to be able to limit how much you want to scan for that year or for that period of time. So for example, some of you said, hey, Sam, all I can scan this year is maybe just 10 terabytes of data because that's what we have budgeted for this year. And we are hearing our customers on that kind of request, and we said, sure. So we have provided what we call scan quota. It allows you to limit the amount of scanning you want. All right. So once you're ready, or once you hit that threshold and you said, I'm ready to go more, so say 100 terabytes, then you can adjust it to 100 terabytes. This is a customer-defined control where they could limit the amount of spending they want to have or scanning they want to have on this platform itself. Okay. So today, in order to control that, you just need to let your CS manager know, like, hey, can you, Dara, for example, can you help me set my scan quota to just 10 terabyte or 5 terabyte or 100 terabyte? Let her know, and then they'll be able to help you set that. And immediately after that, once you pass the 300 GB, you'll be able to see a little red dot there to show you where the threshold is. Okay. Yep. So, and once you have done that, you have enabled data security. The next thing you need to do is go to settings, go to cloud accounts. For each of the accounts that you want to enable data security, click on this checkbox and follow through the settings itself. All right. So this is where I'll be giving you a quick demo. Allow me to pause my screen. Okay.
And hey, Samuel, sorry to interrupt here. It looks like we've got 2 questions in the Q&A.
Okay, let me see, how can we alter the obfuscation based on access level? Yes, so you today can, in terms of that masking itself, yes, you can change it based on, there are 3 options. There is no mask, meaning you see everything. There is partial mask, which is the default, meaning you show only the last 4 digits. And then of course there is the full mask, which is the example where we show you that you block out everything. With regards to basing it on different access level, I believe you're talking about like different roles. At this moment, we do not have it. The only person who could define it is the sysadmin. He or she can define it as a tenant-wide setting. So what I mean is, if he define it as a full mask, it applies to everybody as full mask. If you apply it as partial mask, it applies as partial mask. We are looking and considering about doing this, where we actually allow different people to have different settings. So this is something that we are talking about. If you are keen, I'm happy to talk to you more about this and hear from you on what kind of roles you're using. What do you think would be relevant in terms of the masking itself? Okay, that's from Christopher, right?
Yep, thank you, Samuel.
Sure. Is there another question?
Yep, it looks like we've got five more.
Sorry, I don't think I'm seeing the other 4 questions. So do you mind pasting this onto the chat itself, because I'm only seeing 1 out of that 4, out of 5, Dara.
Sure.
Okay, anyway, let me get back to sharing with you my screen. Give me 1 second. Share my screen over here. Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yep, I can see your screen.
Okay, great. So this is the dashboard I was referring to earlier. Okay, so all of this is what I was sharing. You could actually mouse over to see what kind of data there are. In this case, there's 5,000 public objects, 9,000 sensitive objects, and 1,000 malware objects. There's 24 buckets here. There's different profiles over here. And these are all the objects that violates each one of these data profile. There are 2 users that we use as an example here. 7,000 over alerts, and of course, data policy. At this moment, as you can tell, we have intentionally put our data across different parts of the world to reflect what it looks like. So in this map, sorry, just scroll a little bit down. In this map at the bottom, you could see where these violations are happening in real time, where all these are happening across the globe for your organization. And clearly, as you can see, the larger the circle, it just reflects that there are more violations to take care of in a certain region. Okay, so that's the first thing I'd like to share with you about. The second thing I'd like to share with you about here is the cloud accounts, where you could actually go in here, okay, and you could edit or add a new account for data security. Once you have check on this checkbox, you go through this process of adding all these entries on AWS itself. And over here, I'd like to bring your attention to this area where we talk about the ability for you to select either all buckets or custom buckets. Okay, so if you were to select all, you scan everything except for the log files, which makes sense. Or if you select custom, you can actually select the files that you want to. But what's interesting here is there are 2 options here, that is forward and backward, and forward only. I often receive a lot of questions on this, so I should address this ahead of time here is, so what is the difference between these 2? Well, backward scan is a simple like batch scanning. What it does is, for example, if you have 10 terabytes of file, what most other systems will do today, and similarly to with us with backward scan, is you take a 10 terabyte of file, chop it up into different, I'll say, batch, and then process them batch by batch. So let's say hypothetically, we process them 500 gig a day. All right, so it'll take about 20 days to deal with 10 terabytes. Okay, so what happens from now to 20 days later if me or someone in your team adds a sensitive data into the web, your S3 bucket, or add a malware? So most other solutions will take about 20 days to get it processed, probably tell you an answer within that day. So it takes approximately 3 weeks before you get a violation or an alert. So between now to then, there's a 3 weeks delay time, probably even longer if the scanning, in terms of workload, you have more than 10 terabytes. You'll probably take even longer before you find that out. So this increases your exposure time, making you more vulnerable, giving whoever that is planned to hack you or find out more about your company more time. They will find out about all this before you will find out, which is not a situation that we want our customers to be in. So what we have here is forward scan. So what forward scan does is for any new or recently modified file, once we pick up from the logs that, hey, a new file has been added, we would start scanning today, not 21 days later, but today. So what this means is we reduce exposure time from the period that this file was potentially supposed to be. Some companies may take 6 months, some companies may take 1 year, depending on the pre-existing data. Usually that is the bigger power that people have. So backward scan deals with existing data, forward scan deals with new or more recently modified files. So we have two engines scanning these three types of files at the same time, pre-existing, new, and modified, okay? So that is the first thing that I like to talk about. The next thing I like to share about here is the dashboard itself, where you're able to see that. So from there, once you look at all this, you actually could click on any one of them to take a look at what kind of objects that you might have in your buckets. So in this case, I just click on the public objects itself. While we are waiting, I see that there's some questions. Let me answer some of these questions. Does your console reside in the cloud? Yes, we do reside in the cloud. Do we have a AOC or for PCI? Currently, I don't think we have any of that. We are helping our customers be PCI. So happy to talk to you more on this topic. How many countries are available in the data profile creation? Sure, I can. Oops, give me a second. While waiting for this, you know what? Let me just jump over to the other page. I can show you what are the countries available. Sorry, I think my browser is not responding. Allow me to close this and open it again. So the next question I see is, are we able to develop policies around structured and unstructured data types and fire based on percentage of matching of other matrix? So today we only deal with unstructured data. So that's how we work on. You'll be able to fire off based on the data patterns, not really so on the matrix itself. One thing you could fire off based on as well, basically to increase your true positive, which is based on proximity keywords. So this is something that you can do to improve on the false positive. Okay, my system is back. Are there compound policies with multiple detectors and complex response actions supported? Today, we do not have remediation. We're working on that. Can I also train the policy on document templates, which are known to be sensitive? Yes, so you can create your own regex or weighted regex to be able to detect what is sensitive or what's not sensitive. So that's something that is possible. Oh, DLP, is it able to scan for encrypted files? So depending on your definition of encrypted, we support anything that AWS can support. So if AWS, they support two right now, their own SSE, server-side encryption, as well as the CMK. These two are supported and we do support them. Are there any integration with SAP systems? Not at this moment. Okay, allow me to share my screen. Okay, so there we go. I use another tenant. So over here, this is where you could see all the objects itself, with account, which region, the service type. You could see the object name. So three of our capabilities that we offer here is number one, what is object exposure? Is this a publicly exposed object or a private object? All right. One thing that I found really useful usually is I would pull, for example, this bucket is the public object over to the left, just beside the object itself. And you can quickly tell, say, okay, Is this in a public bucket? Answer is no. So it's meant to be private. So if this object is meant to be private, but the object exposure is public, so if it's a no and public, that becomes a concern. If it's a yes public bucket and a yes public object, I'm fine. So these are areas where our customers are very concerned about when there is a private bucket with a public object. Okay, this is what requires object level exposure. The next thing that we do provide is data profiles and patterns. So today we have 4 predefined data profiles and I think 600 over data patterns. You will be able to create your own data profiles with either the existing data patterns or your own customized data patterns that you want, either with regex or weighted regex, and as well as the proximity keywords. You can create your own snippets itself. You could generate them. And there are also malware scanning that we do. Do take note that malware scanning, we scan for only currently at this moment, exe files and Linux binaries. Okay. So this is the I would say the inventory that you could see of all this information. So yes, let me go to settings and show you in data. Once you go to settings data, you can click on data profiles or patterns or snippets. So in snippets itself is later where I'll show you. That's where you can configure. I think Christopher's question is, can you adjust the obfuscation itself to different settings? This is where you could do that. As for data profiles, this is where you can actually choose to turn on or turn off, enable or disable any data profile that you're interested in. In this case, I purposefully left GDPR there. So as you can see, once you leave it on, this is what you're scanning against. Okay. Some of you may have noticed this, like, hey, why are there different actions for different profiles? So what this means here is if it's a predefined pattern, the predefined profile, you will not be able to edit or to delete it. You only be able to clone it such that you get a golden image of these predefined profiles. So if you say, I like to use them and modify them, what you could do is, in this case, like what I did for intellectual property, I actually clone it and they created a clone here. And once you do that, you'll be able to edit or delete. So cloning is as simple as clicking on the clone button. And once you do that, you'll be able to see, a post over here that comes up that say that, hey, this profile has been cloned successfully. You can close it. By default, once you clone it, you'll be able to see that it's enabled. You will then be able to go edit or delete it. Okay. So of course, when you edit it, this is where you could actually see or add all the predefined patterns that you have over here. You'll see a long list of all the patterns. I know someone was asking me what are all the countries that we support. I'm just going to scrub very slowly to show the tax ID that we have over here. So these are the list of all the countries that we have. Oops, sorry, ranging from the European countries all the way to the Asian countries, and of course the United States. Okay, you can look at all of this: Slovenia, Netherlands, Japan, Ireland, and I think some of you may even notice that there are different languages being supported here as well. Oh, there we go. I think they're like Hong Kong, some characters that I personally can't read as well. So there you go. There's a lot of data patterns that you could use depending on what you want. Okay. The last thing let's talk about here is the snippets masking. So when you click on this snippets masking, there are 3 different snippets masking to choose. The first one is do not mask. Basically, it means clear text. What you see is what you get. You get everything. The second is partial mask, where you'll be able to see only the last 4 digits if it's a credit card number. And obviously there's full mask, where you do not see anything at all, but it just gives you a context on where this file is. Okay. So with this, I have come to the end of my demo. Let me head back towards the slides and talk a little bit more before I take any other questions that you may have. Let me stop sharing here. Okay, so let me give you a little bit more details on this product itself. So today I was sharing earlier, we have more than 500 plus predefined patterns. We use ML classifiers as well as multiple confidence level to reduce the false positive. There's also the proximity keywords, which you could use to customize your own regex itself to improve on the false positive. There are alerts with 4 predefined profiles. We have more than 20, we can able to support file sizes of 20 meg and below. We currently only support for Amazon S3. This is all the file extensions that we support with regards of scanning for sensitive data from docs to PDF, okay? So here's where we ask Dara to help us with the poll question number 3. With what you have heard so far, these are the next few features that we're working to build on. I'm curious to hear from the crowd here that we have today, what kind of features would be most valuable to you? Things like, is it AWS Org, which you can, mass onboard a numerous number of your users internally? Or is it the need for multi-cloud support? Perhaps some of you are already using, say, Azure or GCP and said, yes, I want this as soon as possible out there. Or is it auto remediation, where you said, hey, I want a solution to remediate? Or perhaps you said, no, I just want you to tell me where it is, I'll remediate myself. So I'm curious to hear from your perspective, which of this is important to you. Better still, if you could help me, select 1 or 2. And if you have any other features that you think will be useful, do put it into the chat room. I'll be interested to hear it from you too. Okay. I see that you have already given your answer. Next we have is licensing. All right. So currently today, as I was sharing, we have 300 gig free for our customers. You are able to use it today when you enable your tenant either by yourself, and you can also check out our docs to go through that whole onboarding process. After 300 gig, that's when we start charging by the gig. It helps you reduce your cost. Instead of per user, you only charge you by the gig that you scan. Currently 1 gig is 0.3 Prisma cloud credits, or 1 terabyte is 30 credits. So some of you who are existing customer, you may be familiar with the term workloads. Credits is the same as workloads. All right. So the call to action here I have is, do take note that data security challenge is a huge and complex challenge, and we have a very unique play. As you can tell, we're here to help you solve that big, messy, hairy design with all other Palo Alto products, starting with Prisma Cloud. And then you may have, or some people may have, private data that is exposed publicly, and you may not be able to know it just at the bucket level. You need to know it not just there, but also at the object level. The solutions that many customers have today is fragmented, manual, costly, and is very resource intensive in order to maintain them. So for us, we are doing a multi-platform approach with different DLP solutions by Palo Alto Networks, as well as we are taking a multi-cloud approach, working on things like Azure and GCP in the near future. So this is a summary of the key takeaways of what we can provide to you, okay? So this is where I encourage you to have some good data protection conversations within your organization. Hear about what is your stakeholders' key concern in the event of breach. What are they most concerned about? Is it PII, or is it things related to HIPAA? What kind of regulations do they have to abide to? How can you help them be better in what we do as a company? All right, data security is available in numerous products, and of course, Prisma Cloud is one of those that we start with. And today for Prisma Cloud, we have a freemium of 300 gig, so do take advantage of that. With that, I thank you for your time, and I've come to the end of the presentation.